Okay, we're going to enter the Twilight Zone today. Now, I'm going to blow your mind here for a minute. You ready?
Ready.
Uh-huh. So every number that you could possibly think of
Does not exist.
would be considered a real number. Okay?
That too.
Until today, we're going to learn about some new numbers that are called imaginary numbers. Sometimes they are also called
composite. I'm just getting out of that.
that was a mathematical C word. That was good.
Yes.
That's the opposite of prime, though. Sometimes they are also referred to as complex numbers. Now, I think that's funny because complex really has no bearing on the difficulty of these numbers, even though it sounds like it does. Just like imaginary, it's not like they actually are figments of our imagination.
So they do exist.
They do exist, but they don't. I know your head hurts already. Okay, so up until today, you couldn't do anything with something like that, right? Okay. Well, I'm going to introduce imaginary numbers. The one thing that you need to remember about imaginary numbers, well, there's actually like 2 or 3 things, but the main thing I want you to remember today is that right there, I, what do you think that stands for? Imaginary. Genius, right? That is what we use to represent the square root of -1. Why is that important? Well, if I have something like the square root of -128, that is actually the square root of -1 times the square root of +128. Right? Negative and then +128. That's how I break it up. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Didn't I just tell you what the square root of -1 is?
Yeah.
What is it?
Imaginary.
It's I. So I would say this is I radical 128. And then I can draw a tree for 128 like I did yesterday. What? So let's see. 128, it's even, so I know it's 2 times something. I think it's 64. 64 is 8 and 8, 4 and 2, 2 and 2. Holy moly, there's a lot of 2s. So this is what you were doing yesterday, right? That part?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's different so far? Just that. So what comes out? A 2.
Yeah.
Another
Another 2.
2.
And
And another
another 2.
2.
And then the other 2 goes inside.
And the other 2 goes inside. And I can't forget that I have an I outside also.
Oh, yeah.
So when I multiply all that together, 2 times 2 times 2, what is that? Don't say 6. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So I would call this 8I radical 2. So yesterday...
It's just the I.
Is the I an actual thing?
Uh-huh.
The I
So
equals
the I is a
The
math.
I takes place of the negative sign and allows you to simplify beyond that.
So the I is a.
Oh, because you can't simplify
The I is a lie.
Okay.
Thank you. So I can do it pretty much the exact same way I did yesterday. Just whenever I see whenever I see a negative inside, I need to remember that that means it's going to this, and so there's going to be an I outside. So I know that this automatically is I radical 112. And draw the tree, right?
So the I is always outside.
Yes. You don't want an I inside a radical.
The only time you're going to have an I if it's negative.
If there's a negative inside the radical, correct. So now I would draw my tree for 112. What does 112 divide by? 2. And what? 56? 56 is what?
8 and 7.
8 and 7. Okay. 8 is 4 and 2. 2 and 2. So the I is always outside. what else comes outside with the I?
A 2 and then another.
A 2 and then another 2. And the 7 has to stay inside. So what have I got? 4I radical 7. Not too bad, right?
No, not
We're doing the exact same thing today as we did yesterday. Just sometimes we're going to have I's.
just something.
Just sometimes. Because look at number 3. Do I have an I in number 3?
No,
Why not?
because it's not negative.
Because there's no negative inside. Now, do not confuse something like this. The square root of negative 8 with the negative square root of 8. Because this one has an I, this one doesn't. This one just has a negative sign outside what you're doing. Okay? So be aware of that difference. All right, 256, no I to worry about, so let's just divide.
Yes.
256, what's 256 divisible by?
60.4.
What was that? 28? 128. And 2? And then 128 is 2 and 64? Wow, this one's very similar to number 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
8 and 8, 4 and 2, 2 and 2, 4 and 2, 2 and 2. All right. No I's, but what's coming out?
A 2.
A 2,
Another
another 2,
and
another
another 2.
2,
And then that's it.
and another 2.
Really? There's 4?
1,
Oh, yeah.
2, 3, 4 2's are outside and nothing's inside.
That's good.
So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is... So what? Did we just find out that the square root of 256 is 16?
Yes.
We did. Look at that. Magic.
I like magic.
All right, let's try... Excuse me, let's try number 4. What do I need to do first?
The I.
Take out the I. It sounds kind of morbid, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which one, left or right? You know.
The middle one.
Okay. Ooh, that's even weirder. All right, 96. 2 and what? 48. 48 is 6 and 8, right? 3 and 2. 4 and 2. 2 and 2. Okay, so what have we got?
A 2.
A 2 and another 2.
Yeah, and then a 3 inside.
And the I, don't forget the I. And inside I have a 3 and a 2.
Yeah.
I'm going to multiply them. So I have 4I radical 6. All right, you try 5 and 6.
Just like that, huh?
Yep, training wheels are coming off.
I'm falling.
It's okay, you'll get some scratches, just get back on.
I just want to
Drop it.
Okay, so negative 125. I know I'm going to have an I. And then I need to break down 125. Now, I know that 125 is 5 quarters. Right? $1.25 is 5 quarters. And 25 is 5 and 5. So, what comes out of 5 with the I? And what's left inside? A 5. Okay. All right, let's look at this guy. You might know this one without even having to do any work.
It's 12.
It's not 12.
Oh my gosh.
It is 12.
It's 12I.
Oh yeah,
Because it's negative 144.
You got me close though.
So, for example, what's the square root of negative 36?
6. Next.
6I. Get the idea?
Yep.
Get the idea? See what I did there? Oh, I'm hilarious. Okay. Solve each equation by taking square roots. So this is the same stuff we did yesterday. We just might encounter an I here or there.
Fuck.
Frank. Isaiah. You're supposed to say Frank.
Isaiah.
So I'm going to square root both sides because my thing that's being squared is by itself, right?
Yeah.
And I need to remember to put the plus or minus outside.
Oh, yeah. Dang, that's a lot of words.
Now the plus and minus outside do not have any effect on whether there's going to be an I or not. Okay? So I have K equals plus or minus radical 96. No negatives to deal with, right? So I'm going to draw a tree for 96. What's 96? Didn't we do that one on the other side, did we?
I have no idea.
We did. 96. The only thing that it's going to be is this minus the what?
The I.
So it's 4 rad 6. Save yourself some time.
Yes.
So K equals plus or minus 4 rad 6. Don't you like it when things
Yeah.
get to be used again? Now, what do you notice about number 8? It's a negative. So when I square root, I can't squeeze the square root between the negative 100, the negative and the 100, just because I want to be difficult. I have to take the square root of the negative 100.
Yeah.
So I have V equals plus or minus the square root of negative 100. What's the square root of negative 100? 10i. So my answer is plus and minus 10i. So?
Yeah.
What?
Or no.
My first grade teacher said it has a monkey tail. Like a J has a monkey tail, and if you want to write pretty, an M can have a monkey tail, and an N can have a monkey tail, and your L can have a monkey tail. So my I has a monkey tail.
Yeah. It's like backwards.
You have an issue with that, you go talk to Mrs. Hatfield, okay?
Okay.
Where's she at?
I think she's probably retired. Okay. What do I do here?
You have to divide both sides by 8.
Divide both sides by 8. Is that going to take away my negative sign?
No.
Okay. So let's see. 720 divided by 8 is 90. So I have negative 90, don't I?
Yes.
All right. So what do I do?
The plus or minus.
Square root.
Yeah, that.
So x equals plus or minus. I'm going to go ahead and take out the I now. Is that okay? I rad 90. And then I have to draw my tree for 90. So let's see. 90 is 9 and 10. 3 and 3. 5 and 2. And again, from yesterday, if you said 90 was 45 times 2, that's fine. Because it is 45 times 2, you should end up still with 2 3s, a 5, and a 2 circled. Okay? Now, I did notice yesterday that some people, as they were doing their number trees, were not circling the bottom number. And I'm not going to tell you that's wrong, because it's not. But I am going to tell you that it's easier to see when your branches are finished if you circle them or something to note that they're done. Because then you can tell where your branches are done and where your branches are not done. Okay? So if you're not doing that, just make sure you're understanding your tree fully. And if you're still not 100% confident on this, then I would suggest circling the numbers at the bottom. Just to make sure. Okay? All right, so what comes out?
The 3.
So, I have my plus or minus, the 3i, right?
Yeah.
And then 5 times 2 is left inside. There's my answer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Good deal. All right, you try 10 then.
That blue was dirty, huh? Plus 4 volts. Oh, wait.
10's not hard.
It's not.
Because here's where you start.
You add the 4.
Yep. Now what? Square root. Bless you.
Thank you.
So x equals plus or minus, what's the square root of negative 3? I radical 3. There's nothing to come out, so the 3's got to stay in there. The only thing that can come out is the I, because we don't want to leave the negative in there.
It's no, no.
Did you have a question?
No, it was a stupid question.
I would say there's no stupid questions, but sometimes there are.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure if it was about the math, it wasn't stupid.
Okay.
All right, let's look at number 11. What should I do first?
Minus.
Yeah, subtract the 9.
Yep, subtract 9. That gives me 4r squared equals, now be careful, it's negative 27 minus 9. You owe $27 to one person and you owe $9 to another person. You owe $36 total. You better start paying people back or they're going to be starting coming after you. So now what do I do?
Divide 4.
Divide by 4. So r squared equals what? Negative 9. Square root both sides. So r equals plus and minus. What's the square root of negative 9? 3i. All right, you do the last one. Shoot, Mrs. Franken, we were doing so great until you threw those fractions in there.
Yep.
Oh
Fractions.
But that fraction isn't bad. Why? Because you can take the square root of 25 and the square root of 4 pretty easily. Right? So, my answer is going to be x equals plus or minus I. And now what? 5 over 2? But that looks funny. Doesn't I 5 over 2 look funny?
Yeah.
So what we would actually write is we would write plus or minus 5 over 2i. You write the I last.
Does it matter which way you do it?
This right here looks like a kindergartner that has no idea what they're doing.
But if you
Okay.
show Miss Franken that you're smart, you can write it that way.
Exactly. That's a good way. I will also accept this. X equals plus or minus 5i over 2 if you want to put the I on top. Okay? So those two are good. That one looks a little less intelligent. Okay? So depending on how you want to portray yourself, there you go.
What if we don't care? Does he just turn it in?
You should care. It's yourself. You're the only person that's in control. All right. I think that's it. Here comes the homework. Happy studying.